This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Post-Thanksgiving holiday NBA coverage. The Celtics lose their streak, but hop back right on it, knocking out the Orlando Magic. The Pacers, the Cavs are streaking. And oh my goodness, the New York Knicks are above 500 basketball team. What is going on? Is it New Year's too early for the NBA league? So much stuff to get into and a great show on tap. So let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, 50 grand, NBA aficionado, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my brother from another mother, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. Did you pardon any turkeys over the course of this Thanksgiving holiday weekend?
Unfortunately, I did, my dude. I'm not the biggest turkey either, unless it's fried or it's jerked, in our traditional seasons. But the typical way to put it in the oven is not really my thing, but, I partook anyway because that's what the family wanted to do. Sometimes you got to make those sacrifices, right? So not a big deal, but salute to all the fans, listeners of NBA Baseline. Another great show, holiday edition, Black Friday edition, the whole nine. So this is going to be a great show. Got a couple great topics and a great guest coming on as well, too.
Definitely. Just so you know, though, Shaw, I did do an official Thanksgiving holiday pardon, kind of like the president does, with a couple turkeys. I did an official pardon on the OKC Warriors game. I just, that was just bad all around. So I'm glad that the food was the following day for me to kind of get all of the illness of ugly basketball being played by the Golden State Warriors the day before Thanksgiving. Maybe they were already thinking about Thanksgiving and pardoning themselves going out to OKC to even compete in that basketball game, brother.
Truth. But then OKC gets a great win there and then drops another win. I mean, had it in their clutches, if you will, and ended up losing to Detroit.
Listen, I told them about messing around with that cranberry apple stuffing, man. They should have went to the quinoa, a little bit lighter on the stomach. You know what I'm saying? They would have looked a little bit more light of foot when they won that basketball court.
Yeah, they were looking a little heavy in that game following Golden State, but hopefully they can get
their act together. I know you were thinking of some other adjectives for that.
Yeah.
All right, listen, we have a great show on board. A little bit, we're gonna have a man, Shawshank Bhargava. Well, why is that name familiar? With this dude is the founder of one of the premier websites that I think not just media people like ourselves are now catching on to, but even you, the fans. Think of the NBA meets the red zone. We'll talk about that a little bit in our segment of The Drop. And then in a few moments, our subject of the breakdown, we talk about the Redeem Team. Players who we feel like certainly needed basketball redemption. We've actually formulated a crew of guys who are worthy to be a part of our Redeem Team for this year. Definitely a great topic of conversation. Once again, we appreciate you and yours tuning into the Baseline NBA podcast. Be sure to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. Available on all the major platforms: iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Microsoft TuneIn Player FM, Google Music, Roku channel, iHeartRadio. Download any of those platforms. Handling ourselves through Almighty Ballers Network. If you want the goods of the NBA 24/7, don't hesitate. Go to Almighty Ballers Network. Great podcast. Our boys, the Drive and Dish podcast is featured on the Almighty Ballers Network. Yours truly, Baseline NBA podcast, featured on Almighty Ballers Network. So be sure to go check them out. Also featured on 16 Wins a Ring. When you want to read up on the latest and stuff that's happening in the NBA, the greatest writers roll out of the 16 Wins a Ring website. The Baseline podcast is also featured there. We're also featured exclusively on Dash Radio, Nothing But Net Network. Definitely check them out. One of the premier online radio stations that covers not just music, but they also cover sports, and we are featured on there as well too. So you know how we do, and you know how we roll. It's time now for the breakdown.
Time to break it
I break it down to the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Callie Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast, and our main topic this week for the breakdown is putting together what we call the Redeem Team. And by that, what we're talking about is, we've watched a lot of great NBA players coming up, especially around our generation, our time. And so often we set such a high bar for these guys. They have, these little pockets of great NBA seasons. And suddenly they hit a wall, or something happens in the course of an NBA season, the spotlight or the stigma seems to taint or stain the way that we look at them moving forward. And the toughest part of an NBA career, I think, for most superstar players, is equating what we say is their success post their highlight of their careers. And they're players who, while they're still very young, they're like still like almost like still like fledglings in the NBA in some regards. That the toughest struggle is being able to find their place in the league. And so for a couple of players, man, that we've often talked highly about, we've seen some great NBA seasons from, we feel like they have done so much already in the course of an early part of this NBA season that in many respects, we think that they've redeemed themselves. So Shaw and I have put together what we call our redeem team so far for the early outset of the NBA season. A few NBA players that you should look at given the struggles that they've been through the last couple of seasons to what they're currently doing for the teams that they're on and the kind of impact that they have on their teams. We're going to do it from a front court, back court perspective. And so, Shaw, I'm going to let you set this off, man. Who are we lined up as to being our premier backcourt players for our redeem team?
Yeah, for me, and even give a little bit more qualifications to this, I think, obviously we know we're only a quarter into the season, if way a quarter way away into the season. We understand that or whatever, but a couple of these guys have really stood out to me in terms of being able to transform their game, whether that be with just hard work over the summer or maybe some cases a different situation that they're in now. Maybe as a result of being on a new team, or maybe even more so, just maybe even getting more minutes. And we're going to cheat a little bit. We're not going to go positioned NBA. We're going to go just kind of backcourt and front court. And I think my backcourt right now for the Redeem team is Jeremy Lamb from the Charlotte Hornets, and then Victor Oladipo from the Indiana Pacers. Those two guys, man, especially in the case of Oladipo, starting and being traded, twice in 2 years, if you will, from Orlando to OKC, now OKC to Indiana. And the Pacers are playing basketball, very good basketball, over 500 at this point as we record this show. And I don't think a lot of people thought Oladipo was going to be quite this good. Now, ironically, as we're recording, he just left the game over the weekend with a knee injury, and hopefully he'll be fine with that. But Oladipo has found a way to get to the basket. He's shooting very well. Playing his best basketball, of his career, like literally. What I mean? Not since his Orlando days, what gives me just the best basketball period of his career. Almost at 23 points per game, and 5 rebounds. I think he had a 14 or 15 rebound game earlier in the year as well, too. Just very impressed with what he's been able to do, and a lot of that has to do with the pace that the Indiana Pacers play at. But he's really matriculated and done very well in that role. And then again, Jeremy Lamb for the Charlotte Hornets, he started most of these games to begin the year in place of Nicholas Batum, who was out with the elbow injury, and he's really just kind of captured that role and hasn't slowed down all that much since Batum has come back. And I think Clifford has said, listen, this is the best this kid has looked, and I think we've all been waiting on Lamb to kind of break out. I think he's one of those guys where we saw the potential offensively as a guy who could really, put buckets on the board, and it just hasn't really translated. But career high in minutes, obviously, again as a result of starting to begin the year, shooting a career high in 3-point percentage as well too. And I think just has understanding control of his basketball game at 25 years old.
I want to go back to Victor Oladipo real quick, Shaw, because I completely agree with you. I really wasn't expecting Victor Oladipo to have the kind of season that he's currently having. I of course expected him to be adequate, and maybe I expected most of his talents to be displayed on the defensive side of the basketball simply because we associate ourselves with Nate McMillan and the fact that his teams play better defensively, albeit it's not something that we've completely seen from him as a head coach per se. But the fact that Oladipo has transformed himself to being what we thought that he was going to be in Orlando, doing it with the Pacers basketball team that we really did not have that many expectations to be a good basketball team to begin with. The fact that he is an important reason why they're this good kind of lends to the idea that, him leaving OKC to be what I think he eventually thought that he was capable of being is a good thing, and we're seeing it at a young point. Now, clearly, when we talk about redeem with Victor Oladipo, we talk about this in the sense that if he was in the NBA for like 6 years or so and things just haven't translated for him, and now he gets to his late 20s and suddenly figures it out, and he has like this small patch where he like plays at such a high level that we start considering him as a quality guard in the NBA, that will be one thing. But I think part of this is the enormous pressure it was for Victor Oladipo to be the savior for the Orlando Magic, and it never translated. And I don't think that he was fully to blame for that. I think the disorganization of the Orlando Magic in part helped really stymie what we're now currently seeing from him. And the other thing I look at this with Victor Oladipo, man, this is home cooking. Remember, this guy was from Indiana University. He is basically a hometown hero. He elevated that program under Tom Crean. He was the golden boy coming out of there because not too many guys from Indiana University are successful NBA basketball players. And I think he's embracing the fact that he is where he is most comfortable, and it's helping the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, I think for me, what's it's most shocking really is that I know Miles Turner missed some games as well too, but I didn't expect him to be just kind of being doing more overall than Miles Turner is. And I think Turner is somebody who's regressed some, and maybe it's because of the injuries, but Oladipo has really taken charge as kind of the leader of this team alongside the guy that came over with him, second year guy Domantas Sabonis. So I'm really surprised and impressed with this Indiana Pacers start to begin the year, and it's all really does stem from Oladipo's ability to get in the lane, even shooting the basketball, very well. I think he's at 45% from the 3-point line right now, which is absurd for me.
I mean, he's shooting better than Steph Curry right now. Like that is absolutely crazy,
And we're not talking like, whatever. He's one shot a game. He's taking 5 threes a game. So he's just really seems to be in a very, very good zone, in a good place. And McMillan has found him to get in the right spots, and he's really translated and transformed himself to a very good basketball player on this Indiana Pacers.
And I don't know what happened with maybe there's a secret magic book that he took with him leaving OKC, but clearly whatever he learned playing under that 1 year for Russell Westbrook is exactly what I think Indiana Pacers fans are adoring about Victor Oladipo, because this kind of aggressiveness and this kind of gameplay we have never seen from him ever since he was a rookie, even when he was drafted as a first-round draft pick for the Orlando Magic. This kind of aggressiveness we certainly have never seen from Victor Oladipo up until this point.
Yeah, you're right there. I think that the aggressiveness, like learning from Westbrook in that way, definitely kind of rubs off, I think. And it just kind of has to. And, now he's on his own roster. And, all those quote unquote fake motivators, if you will. I think he was ranked pretty low in the ESPN rank and wherever else, maybe the SI one as well too. And I know a lot of those guys, they tweeted out afterwards, but he seems to be someone who's really like, all right, this is what you think it is. Let me show you what it's really about. And kudos to him for, really moving forward and having a great season thus far.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about Jeremy Lamb, Shaw, because we talked about how, there's certain players, man, that, they're under the radar. Jeremy Lamb has been one of those kind of guys ever since coming from out of the Milwaukee Bucks. And in the Charlotte, and especially now with the amount of years that he's logged in with the Charlotte Hornets, I've always been wondering, what is it about Jeremy Lamb that had people all enamored with him, and why, they're waiting to a point where we've totally forgotten that this guy's even on a roster. And then now suddenly out of the blue, on the most unlikely of places, is the same place where I think he would have been sitting at the end of the bench. Now we talk about Jeremy Lamb. He's at the forefront of the reason why the Charlotte Hornets are even still in the fold, so to speak, right now in the Eastern Conference, because it's not about the combination between Dwight Howard and Kemba Walker, certainly, as much as we're talking about the additional play of Jeremy Lamb. It's kind of like the Marvin Williams effect. We talk about how Marvin Williams rejuvenated himself in Charlotte. I mean, damn, Jeremy Lamb has been there around the same amount of time as Marvin Williams, and now suddenly we're talking about how important Jeremy Lamb is more than we're talking about Marvin Williams.
Yeah, well, Lamb just, again, he's just committed. He's gotten the minutes to begin the early part of the season. It would be interesting to see if, at the midway point, All-Star break time, if he's still kind of at this level with Batum back and healthy. I think a lot of it is a result of almost getting 30 minutes a night, which is obviously a career high for him. He's never played more than 20 minutes back in his days in OKC. But at the end of the day, he's capitalizing. And again, when you're getting the praise from your head coach and saying, listen, this kid, he's locked in, he's focused, he's worked hard. And he's not so much of a liability even on defense anymore. So, again, he's never going to be a plus defender or a great defender, but I think he's trying on that side, and he understands that's what's going to earn him even some extra minutes as a result of Clifford's system, because that's what Clifford believes in. So, yeah, you can be a great offensive player, but if you're not at least trying on that side of the basketball, I think that's going to hurt you. And the other thing, too, with Batum being out, obviously it's given him a lot of opportunity, but I do think to some degree as well, this is a pseudo result of maybe some of the trust that might be lost in MKG, in terms of being out there on a regular basis, especially trying to force feed him the ball to score in any war or even slash. I don't think they're just putting a MKG on an island, if you will. So I think Lamb is getting some of those minutes kind of across the board, if you will, and I think he can play alongside Kemba and even Batum because again he can space the floor and he's a good finisher at the rim as well too.
All right, you're tuned to the Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA in our segment of the breakdown. We are putting together our redeem team at the early outset of the season. Players who are making an impact, who needed basketball redemption, and certainly they are proving, they are stepping up to the plate, and that they're proving a lot of haters wrong. Let's put it like that. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and focus our attention to the front court players. And particularly, we were talking about this before we jumped on our podcast to record. Initially you were gonna put Brandon Ingram for the Los Angeles Lakers, which I would completely agree with you, because the perspective is, even though Brandon Ingram is a second-year player, to your point, you were mentioning the fact that all of the hype surrounding where Brandon Ingram really should be and what he should mean to the Los Angeles Lakers seemed to have kind of just gone to the wayside. That the way that he has come out and the way that he has kind of elevated himself to say, while people are still thinking that Lonzo Ball should be the man, don't sleep on my skills, because he was supposed to be the Lonzo Ball, a year removed for the Los Angeles Lakers. We decided to go ahead and replace that with Tyreke Evans, who obviously is a much more well-deserved situation for a redeemed player, because if there's anybody who I think certainly needs a comeback out the wazoo, it's a guy who was formerly a Rookie of the Year award winner, who has never lived up since that award to be the kind of player that everyone saw that he was capable of being. And for him to be putting it down the way he is for the Memphis Grizzlies, despite the Grizzlies going through their struggles right now, is a testament that he still believes that he is one of the better players in the NBA.
Yeah, I think Tyreke is making a strong case for Sixth Man of the Year. In addition to our little award here in terms of joining the All Redeem team. 20 games in, if you will. So, 17.7 points per game, his third highest scoring output of his career, only behind his first two seasons, if you will, and thus when he was on the ball and the man, if you will, in Sacramento. Not doing this coming off the bench. He's the second leading scorer on the Grizzlies team behind Gasol. He's actually averaging 0.6 points more than Conley, who I know is out right now as well too. But I just didn't see this coming. And we all, with Tyreke, we know it's about health, but he's one of the guys who's just relentless. Yes, he pounds the hell out of the basketball, but he's always in the paint, always living in the paint. One of the leaders in points in the paint, every single season, especially when he's healthy. And just doing a great job for this Memphis Grizzlies team. Shooting at 50% from the floor, and shooting even 41% for the three-point line as well too. With 4 attempts a game. Tyreke has really expanded his game to be decent from those areas. And I think the Grizzlies couldn't have asked for anything better from Tyreke Evans to start this year. Again, we're only 20 or so games in. Can he keep it up? I don't know, but I'm so excited to see this guy. I've had an opportunity to interview him a couple times as well too. He's a good cat, good dude. It just has he's had some bad luck, if you will, especially with injuries and maybe some teams not necessarily even wanting him for whatever reason. I think the Memphis Grizzlies found their guy, if you will, and he's going to be a part of this rotation for a good little while.
And I think the other thing too, Shaw, that is important to emphasize is the impact certain head coaches have on players. And I think that there is a chemistry that is working with Tyreke Evans and David Fizdale. And we don't often talk about the racial element to certain to certain dynamics, because when we talk about the NBA is predominantly a African American based sport, right? But I think what's also important is the fact that at times head coaches don't have the right staff around guys who are not mentally functioning in a manner that you can see progression from. And clearly, given the struggles that Tyreke Evans has endured, especially during his time with two losing organizations, one in Sacramento and then the other one with New Orleans. Here you have a situation where the Memphis Grizzlies has always been a steady, successful basketball program. They've not been elite because they have not gotten to the NBA Finals yet, but they are always in the playoffs. They're always in the conversation of being in the playoffs. They're always competitive in one of the most competitive divisions that's out there in the Southwest Division. And then you got a guy like David Fizdale who, made his bones under the tutelage of Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra. And I think that dynamic is really what's helping Tyreek Evans to understand what he's capable of. That even though he may not be the player that he thought he was after his rookie season, that he knows how important all of the other assets he brings to the table is what the Memphis Grizzlies need to be able to be a functioning, successful basketball team. And I think he understands that value to it. And I think it's why it's showing right now for him being one of the second best players coming off the bench for any basketball team that's in the NBA.
Yeah, again, I think a lot can be made about that as well too. And again, just being older, more mature, and kind of in a different headspace, and having a specific role to play. I think even in New Orleans, there was a lot of, well, should he be starting? Should he be coming off the bench? When he got there, he wasn't too happy about that. Because again, I remember talking to him about it. And then he's kind of settled into his role a little bit and played good basketball for the times he was healthy in New Orleans. But just things didn't work out there. I moved to Sacramento back again too, and that was really just to get Buddy healed over there. Sacramento had no intentions of keeping him past that season, and now I think in Memphis he has a role to fit. They need scoring. He's actually averaging his career best in terms of offensive rating, tied for his career best in defensive rating as well too. And that's more a result of Memphis just being a better defensive team in general. But I think Tyreek just understands what he needs to do and is going out there and doing it, and they're allowing him to be him, if you will. And I don't think he's being over selfish. I think he's looking for guys when the opportunity is there. He's had some decent chemistry with some guys on the wing and Gasol specifically as well too. Tyreek is just in a good space right now. Hopefully continues all season long.
And one thing to add to that point, Shaw, is the way that he works with some of the other premier players. So to your point, we're seeing really good play from Marc Gasol at the center spot, and I think part of that is his ability to work with guys that are coming off the bench. I think one of the hardest things that tends to happen with the Memphis Grizzlies is they can never afford to leave one of their, or if not both of their best players off the basketball court because of the fact that they struggle scoring the basketball. And then when you have a guy like Tyreek Evans, who can be a dynamic scorer when given the space, when given the personnel to work with, you begin to see how that affects the superstars, because not only is it a question of whether or not they should be on the basketball court, they want to be on the basketball court. And if you're David Fizdale, you want to leave guys like a combination of a Marc Gasol and Tyreek Evans on the basketball court so you can give Mike Conley a breather, or leave Tyreek Evans and Mike Conley on the basketball court and give Marc Gasol a breather. So the fact that Tyreek Evans has really elevated his game and allowed himself to be the versatile scorer that he is, it's giving David Fizdale options, something that he's been very limited with since last season, given all the injuries that have happened. And I think that as well too. Again, we're not seeing it because as we're recording this podcast, the Grizzlies are suffering, a bad losing streak, and they're struggling. But when you're seeing these players giving you what they're showing you already in the early outset, good teams figure it out and they'll turn it around. And it's got to be a plus knowing that a guy like Tyreek Evans is who you're going to have that in the middle of making that turnaround for, because that's why we talk about the Memphis Grizzlies always being a possible playoff team every single season. All right, Shaw, let's go ahead and talk about these backcourt players, right? We got two interesting people that you bring up. Normally you'll have like a power forward and a center, but we're going outside the level of conventionalism here because these two guys are very much noteworthy. They're bigs, right? Not a lot of love for the bigs, man, over the last few years, especially for this one. Our man, Dwight Howard. Superman is now beloved again. Maybe he really has found himself a true home in Charlotte, and it's actually showing because the Charlotte Hornets are actually a decent basketball team. They're a competitive basketball team. And Andre Drummond, man, what a job this boy is doing for the Detroit Pistons, Shaw. We have them picked to round out our front court for the Redeem team. What are you feeling about these two players and the impact that they're having for their teams respectively?
Yeah, I think with Dwight, it's more perception than it is. It's even statistics, if you will. So I think this is a little bit of a cheat, especially on my part, if you will, because the numbers don't.
Oh, and you never cheat. You never cheat.
Well, not like that. I mean, he's averaging more points than he did in Atlanta. By 2 points per game. The rebounds are 0.2 better than it was in Atlanta last year, whatever. But I think it's just an overall feel for what he's bringing to this roster, and seems to be in a good space now. Ironically, we put him on this Redeem team, and then over the weekend he does some crazy. I don't even know what you want to call. I guess it was a fellatio sign into the Cleveland Cavaliers crowd as a result of some heckling instincts that he got. Again, you try to be on Dwight's side, and he kind of does something a little bit quirky. So that was kind of the buzz for a little bit on Friday night over the weekend. But nevertheless, he's doing what he needs to do in terms of being a good defender, building that chemistry alongside Kemba as we thought and hoped he would and needed to do going into the season as well too, and doing a decent job, not a great job, but doing a decent job passing out of double teams when they arise and come at him. Again, he's not somebody that teams feel like they need to double anymore, but every now and then, especially when he's dominating, and he has parts of this season where he has dominated the glass and in terms of getting offensive rebounds and putbacks, things of that nature. And it felt like he really could handle some of the scoring load. When that comes, he's been able to make some decent passes to cutters and people in the wing. So I think again, it's not so much a statistic-based redeem thing here as it is a perception thing. As Charlotte is very happy to have him in the middle, kind of manning things for them down low.
I think it's a redeemed. I think it's a redeemed theme for Dwight Howard because he's not well liked. I don't. I guess what I want to make sure that I'm parsing out here is that I don't want people getting the perception when I say that Dwight Howard is, the most hated player. He's not the most hated player, but he certainly is not the most liked. There's this running theme that seems to happen with Dwight Howard where there is a perception of what the outside feel and what the inside is really saying. And the outside feel is, this guy seems like he sulks. He's unhappy. He has to be the center of attention, so to speak, pun on words. And then on the inside, there's a select few guys, you know what I'm saying, that really do like playing with Dwight Howard, that really do like his presence. They like his jovial feel. But then I think that there are superstar players who are hungry about wanting to win, that probably despise and detest Dwight Howard because I think they envy the fact that this man is a man amongst boys, and yet he doesn't impose his will on the rest of the NBA. Now, listen, we can attribute all of the injuries that he suffered. We could attribute, that maybe those were the yesteryears of what he did when he was in Orlando Magic, and the big the centers at that time frame were more of the focal point still, and it wasn't a guard-oriented type league, and the pace of play has increased so rapidly. But I still feel like in some way, shape, or form, we have to look at this from a redemption factor, because in order for Dwight Howard to have an impact on the game, especially for any team that he plays for, he has to buy into what he can do on the court for his team. And that was something that he has always struggled with coming out of Orlando, going to Los Angeles, going to Houston, then going to Atlanta. And maybe this is a situation where he understands that he has to make that switch transition. He has to flip that switch. He has to be coachable. He has to be adjustable. And that's the thing that I just never saw from Dwight Howard, which maybe he is now figuring that out. And he's playing against players that are showing the kind of patience that exudes that from what we're seeing from Dwight Howard.
Yeah, and I think even in this situation, he's not even expected to do a whole lot. I think even offensively, and what people and analysts have been saying for a long time. So I just understands that, you're at this point of your career, you're not going to get a lot of straight post ups and touches down low. You'll get a couple every now and then, but your job is really to kind of clean up and almost in some ways, and this is no disrespect, to almost be kind of like a DeAndre Jordan. Just clean up the messes, man, and get those putbacks. You can use your physicality and strength inside. You still, even at 32 years old, X amount of years in the league, he still has one of the more physical, dominant players in the NBA. And I think he's kind of assimilated to that role. Even now, with like Kemba is clearly the number one. Atlanta was a strange situation because, Paul Millsap and Dennis Schroeder, those guys, even when Teague was there the year before, or whatever the case may be, like those aren't dominant scorers. You know what I mean? Like, and it was just a weird fit. So I think for Dwight or whatever the case may be, like having a guy like Kemba now, okay, that's the guy. There's no question, who should be taking shots. And Dwight is really second and third, if you will. Even as we record, he's third in scoring on the roster, and that's where he needs to be, not as somebody as a feature guy in anybody's offense.
Well, listen, in this day and age, when we talk about the NBA players that have, that are number crunchers and stuff, if we just strip him from what he does, just, on the surface, as far as numbers go, his per 36 minutes numbers are really great. They're up there when you look at the rest of the bigs. And I guess that's what it is. I think we have to start compartmentalizing rather than looking at him holistically throughout the gamut of the NBA in the same way that we talk about, the Steph Currys and the Kevin Durant's and the LeBron Jameses in his own elk. How does Dwight Howard play amongst those guys, and he is still among one of the better centers in the NBA. I just think that he needs to buy more into it. And when you look at that in comparison to this next guy that we're talking about, Andre Drummond, this is a guy who is a younger version of Dwight Howard in that his game is evolving. But the difference between why Drummond may be more successful for extended years on whoever he's playing for is because he understands what he needs to do in order to be a better basketball player. And maybe it's because it wasn't that he was touted. He wasn't, the keys weren't automatically given to him. He had to earn that keep, so to speak, being a part of the Detroit Pistons. And what we're seeing now from Andre Drummond is exactly what the Pistons truly need in order for them to get what they're getting. And remember, this is under Stan Van Gundy, the same Stan Van Gundy that was guiding Dwight Howard's career and all of the craziness that was going on in Orlando. And you can see the impact now in the second year under the third year now under Van Gundy, what we're seeing with Drummond and why the Detroit Pistons are now starting to turn things around.
Yeah, well, I mean, as we alluded to a little while ago, a couple weeks ago when we had Doug Smith on the Pistons, and the fact that just they're running the offense through through Andre Drummond as kind of a focal point at that mid post and elbow area where he's doing a lot of dribble handoffs and kickouts to the wings and things of that nature. I think kind of even what you said a little bit earlier on, with like the coaches having a special relationship. I think if there was a rivalry relationship before with Van Gundy and Drummond, I think Van Gundy has done a great job in kind of smoothing that over this year because that shows a lot of trust in the player. It's like, you know what? Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna, although we know you can't shoot, you're not a threat in the pick and pop situation. We're gonna stop just kind of bulldozing the pick and roll, or you're just rolling, and trying to clean up. We're gonna have you have a little bit more offensive responsibility. And I think for him, that has definitely emphasized his ability and even his enthusiasm to play this season. Again, the points aren't where it was a full season ago, where it was at 16. He's only at 13.7, I think it is right now. But his rebounds are at right now a career high. He leads the league in rebounding there, averaging an absurd amount of offensive rebounds at 5.6 offensive rebounds a game. Like that's just insane to me. And the fact that he just understands his role now, and because Van Gundy has put that trust in him, really has it in a good space. And the Pistons playing their best basketball in a good little while as well too. So for me, this is why he definitely makes his team, because I didn't see this type of resurgence coming, at least not in this way. You might think, okay, he might get back to, a guy who's 15 and 13 a game or whatever the case would be. But the fact that it's not so much the points, but it's the rebounding and the assists that are up and just his overall buy-in defensively, I think that's what puts him on the redeem team for me.
I got one quick question to you, Shaw, before we talk about our honorable mentions real quick. Do you think that part of what we're seeing from Drummond is a byproduct of Stan Van Gundy's hesitance? Maybe there was a level of hesitance in his belief and trust system that he needed to build with Andre Drummond in the way that he built with Dwight Howard. I mean, let's not obfuscate the fact that there was a very visceral relationship between Howard and Van Gundy in the latter part of their careers, being the head coach for the Orlando Magic and him being still the superstar for the Orlando Magic. And I think that the way they parted between each other certainly soured. And listen, you would be naive to tell me that when you come into a situation where you want full control, you want control of your roster, the personnel that you want to coach up and put out there on the basketball court, that there probably is a level of hesitance when a guy like Andre Drummond, whose popularity obviously grew before Van Gundy took the position, about how he wanted to coach up, how he wanted to utilize a guy like Drummond, and how Drummond has to get used to a guy like Stan Van Gundy, who's had those previous experiences with bigs in a high-profile roster like out there in Orlando at that time.
Well, here's the thing that I'll say about that. We have to credit Van Gundy in essence for adapting. That much I think can definitely be said. I think there's no question, and anybody who's watching the Pistons when Van Gundy got there and got kind of control as president and coach as well, understand that he was trying to rebuild what the success he had in Orlando. He had a dominant post player, well, not a post player, but a dominant big, if you will, a physically imposing big, and then he was just trying to surround that big with big shooters. And that just didn't work for the overall roster. And Reggie Jackson wasn't the same kind of point guard that I think even Jameer was at that time. Didn't have the same amount of spacing ability from the perimeter. And I think they had a down year last year because of a lot of injuries, and they just had to adapt. And Van Gundy did a great job, as again Duncan Smith told us a couple weeks ago, in reshaping and reformatting this offense. And then getting veteran guys in there as well too, and Anthony Tolliver to kind of get guys to be held accountable. And that comes from just being in the league and the overall maturation process. And Drummond has assimilated to that. So, like I said earlier, the relationship with Van Gundy seems to be in a better place than it was previously. And Van Gundy's probably learned from having something go awry with Dwight, and understanding, hey, I wanted to do it this way, but this is not the way that it can work with this roster. So let me change things up and, put the onus on some of these guys and maybe put them in some positions that they haven't been in before and see how it works out. Thus far, the fruit has definitely been positive.
All right, you tuned to the Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, our subject of the breakdown as we put together our Redeem team. All right, Shaw. So a couple of honorable mentions that we have here as far as guys that we know are certainly capable of being a part of the Redeem team. They weren't a part of the starting lineup, so to speak, of the Redeem team, but certainly worth mentioning. You brought up an interesting player, Chris Middleton. Why would you use Chris? Why would you have Chris Middleton as someone as a part of the Redeem team?
Well, simply because, again, he was hurt most of last year, came back and played the final 29 games, and never was quite himself. But I think this year, he's assimilated, to playing alongside Giannis and playing very good basketball as a result of it as well too. Almost a 20 point game, almost 25 and 5, for the season. And I think that's hard to do, playing alongside a superstar MVP candidate like Giannis. Like Chris Middleton, there's a lot of rumors about why the Bucks got Eric Bledsoe in terms of like, oh, they didn't have a nice number 2 or somebody else that he could rely on. I'm like, Chris Middleton is a very good basketball player and has been that way for a little while now. And I think the fact that he's doing what he's doing, although his 3-point percentage is way down from what it ordinarily is, I think Jason Kidd knows what he has in Middleton and goes out there and plays him a ton of minutes as a result of it, almost 38 minutes a night for Middleton. So for me, just coming back from last season's kind of just down year, obviously after being out, I think and again, why I don't have him in the starting lineup, because I think we all know he could be this good. So, but I also think it's worth mentioning, if you will, the fact that he's almost at 25 and 5 a game, at almost 20 games.
All right. Well, I have 2 players that I think is certainly deserving to be part of the Redeem team, and their situations really warrant it in the sense that we didn't think that we were going to get this kind of productivity from these guys, Jeff Green and Jameer Nelson. All right. We're talking about these guys like the last time we talked about them was back in the early 2000s, right? In this 2017. But Jeff Green, to me, is certainly someone's deserving of being a part of this Redeem team, because I really just think that this guy wouldn't have been on an NBA roster, given what he's shown us over the last couple of seasons coming from Orlando. He signs this deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I don't know what Tyronn Lue has seen in this guy, but he has certainly been he's been the benefactor of playing next to a guy like LeBron James. And the Cleveland Cavaliers have been the benefactor of actually having a legitimate forward coming off the bench, that they're not relying on heavy minutes between LeBron James and Kevin Love to come out there and be an offensive spark when the Cleveland Cavaliers need it. We don't normally look at the numbers on its surface. 10 points per game doesn't mean much, but his per 36 minutes, 17.8, around 5 rebounds, around 2.5 assists per game. I mean, these are numbers that are not, jumping off the meter at times when we're talking about a guy like Jeff Green, because the guy's game just seems like it never translates to being anything successful. And right now, while the Cleveland Cavaliers are streaking, he's certainly one of the main reasons why. And so I think he is definitely someone that has to be in that conversation when we talk about 6-man or guys that are coming off the bench, the versatility. Jeff Green is showing it, and he's doing it in a situation where he could easily be the Richard Jeffersons of the world, the Channing Frys of the world, so to speak. He's coming in and he's initially making an impact for a basketball team that certainly utilizes his talents. And then with Jameer Nelson, let's remember a few weeks ago, this guy got waived from the Denver Nuggets because they had no place for this dude. And ultimately, this guy really should be obsolete when you talk about where his game is. He's like an old man point guard. It's like, a dinosaur in this league. And yet this guy might be the most important player for the New Orleans Pelicans, who right now are rolling. And he is a stabilizing factor. He's averaging more minutes than Rajon Rondo and Tony Allen, 2 offseason pickups who are supposed to help stabilize and help them make that push for the playoffs. And it's actually Jameer Nelson's gameplay that's put him in that position. The guy is shooting 40% from 3 right now for the New Orleans Pelicans, a team that we've always talked about, that while they have two of the most talented bigs in the game, they can't shoot the basketball worth a lick. And he is one of the main reasons why the New Orleans Pelicans are above 500 basketball team.
Yeah, I think, like you said, as a guy who just came in there as a late addition just because Rondo was hurt to begin the year, um, I think he's done extremely well, in that spot, and kudos to him. And kind of even maintaining that role since Rondo has been back as well too. I mean, we know the Pelicans are good, right? But they have absolutely no wing depth at all. Like their wings are terrible. So it really comes from the point guard position and then basically Cousins and Anthony Davis. Like that's kind of where it's at. So Nelson is definitely a part of that backcourt that's kind of holding things down on that side while the wings struggle so dramatically. And again, in case of Jeff Green, I think it's just about the right role in the right situation on the right team. And I think LeBron makes everybody better, and I think Jeff Green is proof positive of that as well too. So kudos to him for just kind of assimilating to his role, and going out there and producing, especially with all the injuries the Cavs have. I think he's definitely helped them, overcome some of those early season bugs, and while they wait for some guys to get back to the team.
All right. Well, there you have it. Our redeemed team. We definitely want to hear from you. Who do you consider as players that have redeemed themselves after years of obscurity in the NBA? Who's worthy of being in that conversation? Definitely hit us up here on at NBA Baseline. Coming up on our segment of The Drop, the founder for 3ball.io, a very unique and interesting website that is capturing the eye of the NBA community. Think of this as the NBA meets the NFL Red Zone. Seem interested? I know we are. So definitely check out this great interview here on the Baseline NBA podcast. Time now for The Drop. Callie Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. This week we have an awesome guest on board with us to talk about a website that is really unique in the form of how we are now capturing great moments in the NBA. Not just from a statistics perspective, but just an overall aesthetics perspective in how we're looking at the NBA. Kind of like the NBA meets the Red Zone. And with us is the founder for 3ball.io, Shashank Bhargava. He is the man. And we just want to thank you so much for jumping on board with us to talk about really a fascinating website that is garnering a lot of traction right now in the NBA community, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's really great to be on the show.
So the first thing that I think we want to kind of get our arms around is, how did the conceptualization of 3ball.io come about? And why did you feel it was necessary that you have a website that really caters to us being able to capture the moments that we see on your website with regards to the highlights and the clips capturing all of the NBA games?
Yeah, for sure. So the way the website came about in the first place was my two friends and I were just browsing through like highlights on stats.nba.com. And we were just looking for like random plays like Steph Curry threes or like LeBron James dunks. And we just found it was like super, super hard to find just like a bunch of these plays. And then when we delved into it further, we realized like, oh, if like a blogger is trying to do like a deep dive on like how does Steph shoot his threes, or why is like Ben Simmons shooting off or something like that, we realized it was like super hard to find those highlights. And with like the new way people consume the NBA, like super on Twitter, all over social media and things like that, we realized like it's super helpful for people to be able to just like easily find whichever plays they want or like whatever category of plays they want, and to make it like to have a good user interface on that and to have it like easily searchable. It's like makes the whole experience so much better.
So I discovered the site maybe sometime last year, if you will, per se. And I think you maybe took the summer off or something the case would be. Just how long has the site kind of been in existence, if you will, and what's just been the response and feedback, from people who are using it so far that you've gotten?
For sure. So I guess we launched in about December. We started building it about last Thanksgiving. So I guess it's been almost a year now. And the response has been actually really great. The coolest part, I would say, has been a bunch of bloggers who we read fairly regularly and podcasters who we listen to have like reached out and been like, hey, this is really awesome. Thanks so much for building this. We use this all the time. And then another really great part is like a lot of the people who embed our clips on their blog posts or like blog posts we would have read otherwise. So we like we've been featured on like Bleacher Report or like Liberty Ballers and various other SB Nation sites that we like used to read regularly. And so now seeing that like our content is, well, content in like quotations, since like the NBA owns all the real content, is like on their site instead of like using Streamable or having them have to like crop it themselves is just like really cool and provides a lot of validation for us.
Shashank here. Um, One of the things that really fascinates me about the website is the simplicity of it. And I think at times we often get too caught up in the fanciness of the site. It's just flat out. Here are the clips. You go here. You want to find the Steph Curry layup. You find it. It seems like it's very seamless. It's very simplified. Was that the goal? Is that you just want the substance to be accessible for whoever is going through the website in order to pull these highlights and to pull those clips? And how much work and emphasis, how much time and emphasis does it take for you and your crew to be able to get these clips loaded? Or have you figured it out? Have you formulated it in a way where it's just seamless? Like, how much work is going into that?
Yeah, so like the first few times it took a lot of work, but we've sort of been able to automate it a little bit in that like every day when the NBA puts up new plays, we're able to just like collect all of them on our own and be able to serve them to our users. And simplicity was always the first thing in mind when it came to this. We realized like the use case for our site is fairly simple, that if you just want to find like shots by a certain player or like blocks by a certain player, you should be able to do that. And most people aren't looking for anything super complicated. So given that, we just wanted to make the experience for finding like just something super simple, like as simple as it sounds. And for some reason, the doing it with the NBA was not as easy as we would have liked. And so although they have gotten a lot better on that this year, actually, but we sort of wanted to like bring it to the next level.
So, what is the ultimate goal, I think, for the site? Is this something that, in essence, you'd like to maybe partner with the NBA or maybe even partner with a specific team at some point, or the case to be? And I guess the second part of that question is just how deep does the database go? Is it pretty much the last two seasons, or does it go from seasons before this for the last couple of years?
Right now, at least, we only have this season and the last season, but we're hoping in the like longer term future to sort of get some more data. As for like where we see the site going, the three of us are currently like UC Berkeley students, and this is just something we work on like on the side when we have some extra time. So we're not really sure if there's any like real future with it in terms of like partnerships or anything like that. That would be really awesome. But on the whole, I think we just want to like keep it going and help out bloggers and like casual NBA fans help find their highlights.
So that's what I think is what's so unique, is that this is really your pure admiration or your love for the game and the way that you're applying what you do on your day to day as a student, and how it's translated into now this phenomenon of people actually looking at the NBA differently. Did you guys consider that when you were doing this, as much as it was about you guys being able to just have the ability to just breaking down specific clips and looking at shots? I mean, how did you kind of navigate yourself to this point where now you've established an engine that is not only beneficial for the people that you normally read for in blogs, but even for fans alike who don't get an opportunity to see the games, who don't get an opportunity to see certain highlights, that they're actually gravitating to your website to see certain things that they probably didn't have the accessibility to have access to before?
I think that's actually been like the coolest part is all three of us have experience like building websites and like building like general applications, and we're all like big NBA fans as well. And so sort of just having the ability to like take something that we like really care about in the NBA and like actually build like a website that like helps users like use it every day or like navigate like highlights every morning or like if they missed a game or something like that has been really like awesome. Actually, one of the coolest parts about the site is that like when I was in high school, I used to every morning, like after since I wouldn't be able to catch the games at night, I'd like go in the library and I'd watch the highlights every morning after each game. And like now, essentially, instead of doing that, I can just do it on this site that like we built ourselves, and like other people get to do that too. And so that's just been like a really unique experience, and like one that makes us feel like we're giving back to like the NBA community, and like through things like Reddit and like all the like SB Nation blogs and Bleacher Report, or like all like the podcasts as well. It seems like there's just like this really great modern NBA community, and just having like a small part of it has like provided us with like a lot of satisfaction.
So talk to me a little bit about, and explained it maybe I think a little bit a while ago, but just so I can try to understand it. How are the players getting aggregated again so quickly? How is the system kind of working, and then breaking things down like that? What's kind of the back end stuff behind this? I know this might be a little techie and some stuff I mean I don't even understand, but just I think for our listeners, I think this would be pretty interesting to find out.
Yeah. So essentially, the way it works is like the NBA has all the plays on their end, and all we really do is like when they post the plays, we just like copy them into like our database, and so we don't actually host any of the plays ourselves. All of the plays are hosted by the NBA, but we just like index them so that essentially when you're looking for dunks, our database will give you back all the dunks. And if you're looking for all the plays that have Steph Curry, it will look up in our players table like which plays have Steph Curry. And so it's essentially most of the actual like aggregation and things like that are all on the NBA. We rely like very heavily on the NBA itself, and like stats.nba.com, and they really do a great job in like keeping their resources up to date, and like building out like a great platform for other developers like ourselves to build on top of, and help make tools for fans and bloggers and the like.
Shashank Bhargava here, joining us on the Baseline NBA podcast, founder of 3ball.io. Be sure to check out the Twitter handle at 3ball_. Couple more questions before we let you get out of here, Shashank. So clearly, this is all for the love of the game. So now I have to wonder, who is your NBA team that you like to follow, and do you actually have more favorable highlights for them than you have favorable lowlights for them?
I myself am a huge Sixers fan. I guess in terms of highlights and stuff.
Oh, it's a good time to be a Sixers fan, I suppose, then, right?
Yeah, finally, about time. But I mean, I've been following the team for years now, and I mean, through the whole process and everything, it's been like really cool watching like the team like build through this like vision and through this plan. And I guess it's good that we just started the site over the past 2 years, because I guess before that there would be mostly lowlights. But now with Embiid and Simmons, and hopefully soon Markelle Fultz, we've really got like a great core coming up, and like some awesome highlights on our site. Very frequently I'll like be like, wow, like I really like that, like Embiid Simmons like pick and roll or something like that. And
I guess my question too, before we close out, is just listen. This is a great site, man. We don't want to see it go away, but do we have to worry? Like when you guys graduate and have to move on to other phases of your life, will we not have access to this? Because I'm a writer myself, and starting to use the site in a very effective way. I was telling CL kind of offline. Listen, I'm doing a rookie impact article, and just finding some stuff on some of these other rookies out there has been great, going through the search and through the site. Do we have to worry a little bit, man, when you guys graduate, that this site's going to go away, man? Tell me no. Please tell me no.
Yeah, you guys have nothing to worry about as long as the NBA is there to sort of like give us the resources. It doesn't take much for us to keep it running and keep it going. Possible that like new features or something like that will sort of slow down, but at least what currently exists should exist for the like absolutely the foreseeable future. Maybe at some point we'll be looking for donations to help keep the site like server running and things like that, but it's currently not super expensive, so I really don't think you have anything to worry about.
All right, well, the proclamation has been made. Shaw, you can rest easy now, at least for the rest of the season, or before he graduates.
Like I said, I want to be an angel investor or something. In case maybe something were to go awry, man. Because again, I think this is just so great, man, and it's amazing. I think from the other side of things, well, too, just kind of see young people wanting to give back. Like I think this is such a fast-paced area where everybody's trying to get ahead and get money and get into things like that. it seems like you guys just have a love for basketball and want people to be able to access this. And you're not so much concerned about if it's making money or not making money or whatever the case may be. And to me, that's mind boggling. And, I'm really glad we had the opportunity to talk to you. And if you even kind of express that, because I think this is great. And again, I believe in what you guys are doing.
He is the founder for 3ball.io. He's also an avid fan lover, and now we have found out he is a person that believes in the process. Our man Shashank Bhargava, thank you for joining us this week here on the Baseline NBA podcast, man. And we really appreciate you laying the foundation for what is clearly one of the up-and-coming websites that is pulsating through the NBA community, brother.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me once again. It was really great talking to you guys.
All right, you're tuned to the Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, and this was The Drop.
Coast to coast.
Time now to go coast to coast discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right. There has been rumors speculating about DeAndre Jordan on the trading block. One such rumor is the possibility of the Clippers and the Cavaliers trading DeAndre Jordan for a Tristan Thompson. Are we buying into the possibilities of a trade like that?
I don't see why the Clippers would do that, but other than the fact that,
unless you want to give more of a reason to get rid of Doc Rivers, sure, why not?
I mean, sure, but DJ is again much more impactful than Tristan is. But in general, the fact that the Clippers have been swooning since their early season 4-0 start, it's proof positive that this team maybe just not as good as we wanted it and hoped it could be. DJ being on the block is not too shocking. I don't know if the Cavs are the fit, but I think there's going to be a lot of interesting teams out there and seeing if they'll be able to sign him up for a year following stuff.
All right, speaking of the Cavaliers, very interesting story that's just recently broke. Derrick Rose has apparently stepped away from the team, and he's really now reevaluating his career and possibly his future in playing basketball. What do we make about this, and has this been long overdue?
It's tough. This is a sad story here. I think D Rose, we wanted him to be in a nice situation in Cleveland, and things just kind of changed, with Kyrie then being moved out, the Rose having to start, if you will. I thought he could have held it down until IT came back, but apparently that just wasn't the case. He's tired of being injured, and all kinds of things are swirling. He might end up giving $80 million back to his contract with Adidas if he were to retire, because he signed a very extensive deal with them. This is a very sad and unique situation. Hopefully he gets his mind space back in a good spot where he will want to continue to play. But if his heart's just not in it and his body won't allow him to, then he's got to find a peace of mind off the court, I guess.
Paul Millsap, he is out indefinitely, and yet he is asking for a second opinion on a very serious injury, and clearly he doesn't want to see some time away, and nearly does the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, this is a tough situation for the Nuggets. I mean, they have a lot of depth in general in terms of having guys who can play multiple positions, but Millsap was their free agent signing over the summer, and a guy who was really supposed to kind of puts them over the top in order to try to get the playoffs. If he misses 2 to 3 months as expected, initially prognosticated by Shams over at the Vertical, again, this really puts them behind the 8 ball, and I don't know how they'll recover from it, if you will. But they are seeking a second opinion. He may try to play with some sort of splint, assuming he can't do any more damage to it. But this is a very significant injury for the Denver Nuggets, and hopefully they'll be able to, and Millsap will be back on the court.
Denver Nuggets, one of those teams that are in the conversation of being in the Western Conference playoff picture. And finally, Shaw, the Washington Wizards are going to have to do without John Wall for the next 2 weeks. Obviously, the Washington Wizards cannot function without their best playmaker on that basketball court. But, maybe this is better than, sits out now than to continue to probably do further damage to himself later on.
Absolutely. I mean, he hasn't looked right this season. Hasn't had the same explosiveness that I'm used to seeing with him. And the fact that he's had this knee kind of soreness, if you will, for a while, and even inflammation. They said he got platelet-rich plasma injected into the knee, and that'll be a 2-week process. Hopefully, he'll be back right after that, and maybe not longer. But you're right. Get it done, get it under control as soon as possible, and not have this linger, because when you're messing with your knees, that can be career-threatening, not just season-threatening. So we want to make sure John Wall is right, man, because he's definitely one of the better players in the NBA.
This has been an awesome show yet again. I feel like we're streaking like the Boston Celtics a little bit, Shaw, with the way that we've been rolling out our shows. It was so great to have our man Shashank Bhargava from 3ball.io on board to talk about this really up and coming, much needed website that a lot of people in the NBA community, whether you are in the media or whether you're just a fan, but really appreciate having access to this up and coming site, man. It was great for us to have our conversation talking about the Redeem Team, players that have certainly redeemed themselves after years of struggling with their, respective careers. Great show all around.
Yeah, man, just fun to kind of have the debate and the back and forth, and to give our fans and listeners some knowledge, if you will. I think we're always on the search for like new things and content that maybe hasn't been discussed, and I think our guy out there with 3ball.io helped us out tremendously in that mold, and we'll continue to bring different topics and different ideas to the table, and hopefully our listeners will continue to consume it and enjoy it.
Definitely, man. So I think you and I, man, we can pat our belly a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Show, you know what I'm saying? I think we stuffed the turkey quite nicely in this week's show of The Baseline. So once again, we appreciate our man Shashank Bhargava. Be sure to go check out the site www.3ball.io. It is an awesome website. It's called 3ball. And listen, for you and yours, man, we appreciate you guys. We hope you had a wonderful holiday, and we will get ready to do it one more time. For The Baseline, Cali, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do. And we'll catch up with you next time.